Time now for the Red Hawks Coaches Show on the SEMO ESPN Radio Sports Network. The Southeast Coaches Show airs at ESPN 92.9 FM and 1220 AM from Wings Etc. in Cape and Jackson. This is your chance to delve deep into the Red Hawks basketball season with head coach Rick Ray. So what do you say?
Come on, let's go!
Let's go! Go! Let's go live to Wings Etc. on SEMO ESPN.
It's the Wings, etc. in Cape Girardeau, to be more specific, and it is the Red Hawks Coaches Show, live from Wings in Cape, where we will be right back here next Monday talking basketball with head coach Rick Ray, and we invite you to stop by if you have not already made plans for lunch. Stop by and join us. We'll be here until 1 o'clock. In fact, we are here every Monday during basketball season for an opportunity for you to stop by and also join us not only for lunch, but on Mondays here at Wings Etc., they have their award-winning jumbo wings for just 69 cents. There should be a Patriots just lost the Super Bowl special as well, since Joe Hobbs, a big New England Patriots fan. But they also have a full menu. They have freshly made burgers, wraps, subs, quesadillas, entree salads, and you need to check out their salads. The grilled chicken that they put in the big salad, tremendous. They have smoked ribs, much more on their menus. Their appetizer lineup includes their ultimate nachos. And if you've never tried their deep fried pickle spears, the spicy ones, those are always popular here. And their daily half-pound lunch specials start at just $6.49. It is Wings, etc., where I think they just got everything cleaned up from their big game viewing party here yesterday. Red Hawks head coach Rick Ray is here. What a Super Bowl. You're a football guy. What did you think about that Super Bowl? It went right literally down to the final play. If that pass would have been completed, we would have had a 2-point conversion attempt for potential overtime right down to the last play of the game.
Yeah, if you're talking about entertainment, and I know that that's what everything is going toward, more offense, all the rule changes in the NFL, NCAA football, NCAA basketball have all been compelled to raise the scoring. So you talk about that. I think there was just one punt in that whole entire game.
That's right.
From both sides. So the offensive performance was there. But then you go back to it, probably the biggest play that was made was finally made on the defensive end, and that was the first sack in that whole entire game, and for that fumble to happen and then occur. But I think that everybody at that last point, at that Hail Mary, I just think probably about 90% of the audience thought that, hey, somehow the Patriots are going to get this Hail Mary on a tip or a ricochet and end up getting a touchdown.
So if I told you before the football game even started that the Patriots were not going to punt, they would only have one penalty. They wouldn't have a turnover until very, very late in the football game. Brady would only get sacked once. That he would throw for an NFL playoff record 505 yards, and they would finish with over 600 yards. Is there any possible way you say the Patriots lost that game?
No. If you look at things statistically and you look at what happened in the box score and you didn't watch the game, you say, how did they lose this game? But I think everybody can agree the Patriots defense was not very good that game, but also I think they need to add some athleticism, to their defense in order to keep up with some of these speedy wide receivers, especially the people coming out of the backfield. I think that's what really hurt them, guys like Joseph Adai, keeping up with those guys. So, I think they're going to have to infuse some speed and some athleticism into their defense. But I just thought the thing that came across to me was the play calling from Doug Peterson and their staff, not being afraid to go toe-to-toe and call those plays, because I think a lot of people get conservative in those situations and they don't want to beat themselves. But I think if you play that way against a team as good as the Patriots, you end up losing. So you got to go out and try to play. And the fact that they did that with a so-called backup quarterback, they still kind of let it out and open up their playbook and didn't be conservative, just shows how much confidence those guys have in their skill players, but also in Nick Foles too.
See, here's the thing. We know that a few years ago, Nick Foles, when Chip Kelly was the coach, 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So he had that ability. But we saw him here as the quarterback for the St. Louis Rams. At the end, when he finally lost his job, he couldn't complete a 10-yard pass. It was like, this can't be the same guy. What a run he was able to put together. And And when you talk about the play calling, that's why Jacksonville wasn't in the Super Bowl. Because it was that play calling mentality, the fetal position play calling. I'm playing not to lose the game. How many you've been around collegiate athletics for a long time? You've seen a lot of college football coaches. How many guys end up they just lose their job because that is the way when things get tight and you've got a late lead, you play not to lose and you lose.
Yeah, and in those situations, to be fair, you end up either being a hero or the GOAT. Yeah. Because if they would have went for 4th down at the goal, 4th and goal, and ran that play, and it was unsuccessful, and everybody, why are you throwing the ball to the quarterback in that situation? Why don't you have him up on the center? Like, it would have been all these questions. So it's like either going to be the hero or the GOAT in those situations. And I think in most people in their profession, they much rather end up like, hey, let's be conservative here. More so like, job security and keeping your job and things like that. And then also relying on, hey, let's be sound here. So it's really difficult. But what they did was obviously those guys went in with that game plan. They went in pedal to the metal. Like, they practiced that way. There's no way that those guys didn't practice some of the things that they did, in those situations. And the thing that's amazing about the Eagles, if you look at it, probably two of their two best offensive players were not even playing. They're injured, out for the season. And so when you add those guys back into the fold, how good they can be. And I think this, going into the game, I thought everybody, if you looked at it, thought that the Eagles were a better team. But there was two things that separated the Patriots. It was Tom Brady and Gronkowski. So if you eliminated those two, and I know you just can't eliminate Tom Brady and Gronk, but if you looked at across the board, like defensive line, offensive line, secondary, and separate all those things, people would have said Eagles, Eagles, yeah. Eagles. But it's Tom Brady and Gronk, those two guys that kind of separated themselves, and nobody was going to bet against Tom Brady in that situation.
Now, whether or not Rob Gronkowski ends up being arguably the greatest tight end to ever play. I mean, he may put the numbers up, and I think he would probably at least be in the team photo right now when you're talking about most dominant tight ends to ever play the game. We know what the resume is for Tom Brady, so potentially you've got two of the elite players at their positions who have ever put a football helmet on, right?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously I'm going to be biased here because I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan, so I'm always say Tony Gonzalez when that comes up in that discussion right there. But
the numbers say it is Gonzalez.
Yeah, you would not be in a situation that down the line, if Gronk continues to play, I don't know what he's going to do. He talked about like whether he was going to play or not play, retirement. And obviously he's had some serious injuries and concussions. But you can look at him like you wouldn't be in a situation where if you brought his name up as one of the greatest tight ends of all time, that people would like scoff at you in that suggestion. So, you're talking about definitely Tom Brady for sure. I mean, he's the best quarterback of all time. I mean, hey, you can say this or that about it, but what he's done has just been phenomenal. And then obviously Gronk is in that conversation being the best tight end ever.
And then you make a pretty strong argument for the guy on the sidelines, maybe the greatest NFL coach of all time, right? Bill Belichick.
Yeah, and I still believe that. You look at all the personnel changes that they go through every single year, and then you talk about the people that's been around Tom Brady and some of the moving parts and pieces. I was listening to an argument it was on some radio network that I was listening to while I was driving to go recruiting. They was talking about the incoming Hall of Fame class, and they were talking about the difference between Randy Moss and Terrell Owens, and they said that they thought Terrell Owens was a better wide receiver than Randy Moss.
Better than Moss.
Yeah, and the reason being was because that Randy Moss had better quarterbacking throughout his career than Terrell Owens. And I'm like, they said, you start with Tom Brady. I was like, he was with the Patriots like two seasons. And then he says, then he brought up Dante Culpepper and Randall Cunningham, and I said, so that's compared to Terrell Owens, who had Donovan McNabb and Steve Young. I mean, it was just I couldn't believe that they were saying these things. And then they talked about the linebacker, between Urlacher and Ray Lewis. And, there's a lot of people, would say that Urlacher had just as good a career as Ray Lewis. And you look at I said, really? What are these guys talking about? I said, there's no one that would say that about Ray Lewis.
National network?
Yes.
Or just
it was like
couple
some
of
sort
local homes.
Yeah, no, it wasn't like local. It was late night ESPN radio. And I just couldn't believe it, some of the things they were saying. I'm obviously, I love football. I'm a basketball coach, but I just thought those two things were like dumbfounded.
I'm stunned that you I'm stunned that you heard that.
Yeah.
That's really hard to believe. I mean, if you Randy Moss, Jerry Rice. Now, everyone, I think, believes Jerry Rice is the #1 wide receiver of all time. It's not really that debatable. But in terms of just actual physical skills as a wide receiver, I don't know that anybody's ever had more than Randy Moss.
Yeah, I don't think and I don't know if there ever will be somebody that has that much of a separation between the athleticism and also the skill level that he possessed. I mean, he was a game changer. There was nobody that game plan for the Minnesota Vikings, New England Patriots, whoever he's playing for at that point in time, Oakland Raiders, that didn't have like, hey, we can't, like, we know we have to have two people on him. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, and buts about that. So, the talent level that he possessed, it was off the charts. Now, Jerry Rice was a better wide receiver, but there's never been a more talented wide receiver than Randy Moss.
Disappointed in the Justin Timberlake halftime, were you?
Well, you know what? I think it's getting to the point now where the halftime entertainment, people are expecting this something that's just probably not going to happen.
Right.
So I was impressed. I know there was a big deal about, like, the Prince hologram and the fact that, Sheila E. and the fan club said that it actually had quotes from Prince back in his day that it's demonic, to have a hologram, and that if he wanted to, jam, but I think he maybe said a blues singer or something like that, then it would have happened in that day and time. I know that was a big discussion about it. But to me, I was impressed with the fact that you talk about he was actually singing. I know he had background vocals behind it. And then he's navigating through all these different sets and things like that and changing music and all that stuff. I was impressed with it. But I just think that people getting to the point now where they expect this grand scale, and it's just not going to happen.
No, he's a talented dude. I mean, there's no question with Justin Timberlake. So a really good Super Bowl. I know they had a big turnout here, not only at the Wings, et cetera, in Cape, but also the Wings, et cetera, location over in Jackson. So very successful. We got a replay of the Super Bowl. And Joe Hobbs is covering his eyes every time he walks by to see the replay of the Super Bowl. But we've got it here on the high-def televisions here at Wings, et cetera. Redhawks are going to head out on the road here for their next two games. Just wanted to ask you real quickly here about the way the scheduling has been set up by the Ohio Valley Conference. For decades, you made the trip to Morehead State. You also played Eastern Kentucky on the same trip. I mean, it's called the Death Valley trip. It's just the way that it is. I'm looking around the OVC teams that you've already played, and we always go back and talk about what they have done. Morehead State, Eastern Kentucky, these teams are still doing that, and then suddenly you're going to Morehead State, coming back, going to Martin, and then in a couple of weeks headed all the way back out to Eastern Kentucky. Any explanation from the OVC as to what's going on there?
Yeah, it's nonsensical to me. And the number one thing for me is you talk about student-athletes' welfare. I mean, that is the most important thing, is how our student-athletes end up feeling once they get done playing here at Southeast Missouri State or playing in the OVC. So now you have an opportunity to take advantage of that when you go and you just swing with Eastern Kentucky and Morehead State and then come back. But now we have to go all the way to Morehead State, come back here, then go to UT Martin, and then later on in the season, I believe we go to Eastern Kentucky, then come back home on that Saturday and play at UT Martin. So as far as like rest, recovery, our guys not missing as many academic situations as possible, I just think it's something that needs to be avoided. Now, I know they go out and hire all these mathematicians, and they'd end up putting together the schedules once they change it from a 16-game schedule to an 18-game schedule. But to me, there's got to be a way to, like, disfigure that anomaly and make sure that we get that road trip in where we play both teams at the same time.
So it'll be Morehead State Thursday, and it will be a doubleheader. The Red Hawk women will play first, and then the men, and then it will be a UT Martin game, and that'll be Saturday. That will also be a doubleheader. And you guys, rather than just go to Martin, it's going to be go ahead and come back home and just make it a day of game trip to Martin, Tennessee, right?
Yeah, when we looked at it, it's a whole bunch of things you look at logistically, and then also what you can do. So, I actually asked my players, guys like Denzel Mahoney, Jonathan Dalton, Milos, guys that have been in the program. I just asked them, what would you rather do as far as like breaking that trip up? And a lot of those guys said they want to come back so they can go to class on Friday because they missed so much class. And so that's what we're going to do. So we're going to drive through the night. I didn't want to do it, to be honest with you, but that's something that they want to do. So we want to make sure we're listening to them. And so we're going to come back here, and all our classes are in the afternoon anyway because we practice in the morning. So hopefully they'll get a chance to get a little sleep and get up and go to classes that afternoon.
Red Hawks just had home games against Murray State and Austin Peay. We'll talk more about that with head coach Rick Ray when we come back. We're at Wings, etc., Cape Girardeau location. You're invited. Stop by, join us for lunch. We've got a nice turnout here, but still a seat for you if you'd like to enjoy lunch with us here at Wings, etc. More with Red Hawks head coach Rick Ray after this timeout on SEMO ESPN.
Jumbo wings and an ice-cold schooner while you watch great sports programming on huge flat screens at Wings Etc. Grill and Pub. If you love wings and a whole menu of great food and drink options, come to Wings Etc. for lunch, dinner, late-night drinks and snacking, and lots of HDTV sports. And now, when you can't eat, drink, and watch the game here, order online for pickup at togo.wingsetc.com. It's fast, easy, and convenient. Wings Etc. Grill and Pub. Good food, great times, and online ordering at togo.wingsetc.com.
Hear that squeaking noise? Annoying, isn't it? If your wiper blades sound like this, they probably aren't wiping well either. It's time to change your blades. Rain-X can help. Our wiper blades love windshields. So much so, they hug the glass with a flexible curve design that provides superior visibility and a clean, quiet wipe. So lose the streaks and squeaks and pick up a pair of Rain-X wiper blades today. Find Rain-X Latitude Water Repellency 2-in-1 wiper blades at Advance Auto Parts. Rain-X, outsmart the elements.
As a small business owner, you make every dollar count. So what could you do with $10? Go to Vistaprint.com today and you'll get 500 high-quality custom business cards for only $9.99. That's less than 2 cents per card. And at Vistaprint, your satisfaction is absolutely guaranteed. So it's never been easier to turn 500 strangers into connections. Just visit Vistaprint.com and use promo code 2121 at checkout. That's Vistaprint.com, promo code 2121.
Have you downloaded the SEMO ESPN app?
Check it out.
Check it out now, free on the App Store or Google Play, and download today. Listen live to ESPN 92.9 FM or ESPN 1220 AM 24/7 in crystal clear audio. Watch the Red Hawks Coaches Show live video webcast. Enter our contest. Get local weather and live radar. See what others are saying on our Facebook and Twitter feeds. Everybody's downloading the free SEMO ESPN app. The real question, are you? Find it on the App Store or Google Play today.
End of message.
And now, your ESPN Radio Network local weather forecast.
Icy travel may return to the forecast Tuesday night with freezing rain making a return. We'll keep our eyes on the forecast trends over the next day or so. Sunshine's in the forecast today at 35. Partly cloudy tonight, low 23. Few clouds during the day tomorrow, 40. Freezing rain Tuesday night, but we're dry Wednesday. Sunshine, 38. Richard DeWettig at the Weather Channel.
You're up to date with the latest weather forecast right here on the ESPN Radio Network. This is your local home for Mike and Mike, the Sports Huddle, and all your favorite teams. Get it all right here.
Makes my day go great.
On the SEMO ESPN Sports Network.
It is the Red Hawks Coaches Show, live from Wings, etc. in Cape Girardeau, where we invite you to stop by. You can join us for lunch. And don't forget about the dining rooms filled with all of the best sports programming, high-definition televisions, and, of course, St. Louis Blues hockey in full swing. You can watch the Blues in high def. You're going to be able to watch Cardinal baseball coming up soon, February 13th. So what are we talking about? 8 more days, a week from tomorrow. Pitchers and catchers report down in Jupiter, Florida. This is certainly the home of Cardinal baseball during baseball season. And don't forget, they've got food and drink specials throughout the week at Wings, including their 69-cent wings every Monday, including more drink specials on Mondays. And kids, their menu is terrific for the kiddos. They have family-friendly video games in the dining room as well. And at Wings, they are open 7 days a week and late on the weekends because the games often run late. It's Wings, etc., home of the Red Hawks Coaches Show with head coach Rick Ray. Just wrapped up a 2-game homestand here, Coach, and it started with Murray State on Thursday night. You've got a 2-point lead at halftime, 34-32. You came out, shot only 36% from the field in the first half, but you end up going 6 of 9 from the free throw line. You hit 4 3-pointers in the first half. Very competitive first half, and I would say the defenses for each team were on display a little bit more than the offenses in the first half between you and the Racers.
Yeah, I think first thing to talk about is the atmosphere in the Show Me Center the past 2 games has been terrific. I thought Murray State, our students were there strong. The Greek life was there. And I thought promotion-wise for our Austin Peay game, I thought they did a terrific job with the T-shirt. So, it was disappointing for me that we didn't come through and provide the fans with more to cheer for in a victory. But we really appreciated the crowd. And, I told our team after the game, Austin Peay, I said, you've had 2 terrific crowds here, and you've got to go out and prove yourself to bring those people back. And so I just want to commend our crowd and our promotions and media people coming out and supporting us in that regard. The Murray State game, what I was impressed with is that we actually shot a lower percentage in the first half than Murray State. But, I thought we relied on our defense, and our defense was really active and did a tremendous job trying to do the things that we asked them to do. And I just thought it was a proving point that, hey, we don't have to live through our offense. We're capable of doing some things here defensively, especially against a team, Murray State, who leads the OVC in scoring. So I just thought that after that halftime we would come out and continue to, at some point in time that they were going to make a run because they're so explosive offensively. But I just thought that, there's a point in time in the second half when no other team goes on a run and our team gets disenchanted about that run. Instead of finding a way to persevere and get stops and things like that, we start trying to hit home runs instead of singles, and we get into desperation mode way too early in the second half. So that's a lack of maturity. That's some inexperience. And it's something that we as a staff got to help our guys with to try to. But you can only call so many timeouts, make so many substitutions.
I was going to say, what do you, as a coaching staff, when you guys are discussing game plans and plans of attack in certain scenarios, traditionally, what do coaches do for a team that might say, uh-oh, we're in desperation mode here, and don't change the game plan? Because I know you guys are always very comfortable with what the scouting report is and what the game plan is.
Yeah, and it becomes a point in time where you have to call a timeout just to stop the bleeding. And try to get your guys over there and talk to them and calm them down, because there's a lot of emotions involved in any sport. So what we try to do is we just try to make sure our guys understand, hey, don't fall victim to this. Don't fall prey to this. Hey, get back within our game plan. Obviously, it worked in the first half. There's evidence of that. We just got to make sure we continue to do the right things. But I don't think there's a selfishness to our team. It's just a point that, like, every guy's trying to figure out what they can do on the offensive end to help the team get back. And you talking about all these guys who are talented scorers, they think the way to get back is for them to make individual plays instead of making a simple play. And I don't think it's out of selfishness. It's like, how can I help? How can I stop this run?
Right.
How can I stop this bleeding? And so that's what you got to try to, like, hey, man, like, this is the way you can stop it. Defend, make the extra pass, make them guard us. And so we're going through that right now.
So you look at the game against Murray State, 5 assists in the game. That is something that is not – when you guys are going well, you have such a high percentage of assists to made field goals in the game. This particular matchup, 5 assists, that may be a season low in a conference game.
Yeah, and you're playing against a team like Murray State, you're not going to have success. And I thought that was the truest indicator of what we're talking about in regards to us not sharing the basketball and not making the extra pass. I thought there was way too much individual basketball, and we're not good when we play that way. I think when that ball is moving and popping around, I think any coach in the OVC or anybody that observes us say we're really hard to guard because we have so many people that can make shots and make plays off the bounce. But when that ball gets stagnant, we talk about Pam, the ball is not moving, then I think we become an easy team to guard because we become one-on-one team. And so I don't just think, like, unless you have an elite talent, like, hey, Murray State, the ball can stick a little bit because they got Jonathan Stark. I mean, he can just hold the ball and go make a play. NBA, Russell Westbrook, the ball can stick a little bit because he's so talented. But I think for the most part, when you got a team, that ball needs to be moving around so everybody can take advantage of their skills.
Are they the best offense in the league? I know when Belmont starts hitting threes, but Murray is actually a better three-point shooting team than Belmont. Is that – when they've got Jonathan Stark and Terrell Miller, and all of a sudden Ja Morant has burst onto the scene at point guard. I mean, are they the best offensive team in your opinion?
Yeah, I believe so because I think they put you in a bind with the way Stark. You have to help in some way, shape, or form on him. And then also the fact that he makes the shots that you want other teams to take. You know, when he's taking contested two-point jump shots and contested threes, I mean, those are the shots that you're trying to force defensively, but it kind of defies logic what he does because he makes all those difficult shots. And then I think that what's changed for their team is Ja Morant has allowed him to be off the ball. And so now what happens is Ja Morant is a guy that can really break you down defensively. And so it used to be last year that it was Stark that was making all the plays off the bounce individually, and you could help because you didn't have that weapon on the wing. Now it's Ja Morant is making all those individual plays, but you can't help as much because you can't leave Stark. And so then it just puts you in a bind. And then obviously Miller is a guy that he can make threes, he can defend, he can score in the post. So it's really an isolation problem with him as well. So I would say that they're the most talented offensive team and probably the best team in the OVC.
Terrell Miller is big and strong enough to back anybody down to the post. Is he as tough a matchup problem as there is to guard in the league?
Yeah, I think so because –
I mean, maybe that's not a guard.
Yeah, well, it would automatically, even at the guard position, you know what to do with some things. But with him, you have to ask this question is if you switch, which you need to sometimes on a pick and pop situation because of the way Jonathan Stark and Ja Morant, how good they are off the bounce and making plays. So then it's like, okay, if you switch, now you're going to end up with maybe a point guard or a guard defending Terrell Miller in the post. And not only defending him in the post, what happens when the shot goes up? And now you got a guy like Jonathan Dalton trying to block out a 6'8", 260-pound Terrell Miller. But then it's like, okay, if you don't switch because you're worried about that matchup problem, then when it's a ball screen situation, what are you going to do? Because you have to help on Morant and Stark in that situation. You can't leave them on the island by themselves in that ball screen situation. Now Terrell Miller is popping, and so he's more than a capable three-point shooter. So it's like, are we giving up that three-point shot when you don't switch? So he really puts you in a bind. So there may be more talented guys or better guards, but nobody that you have to sit there and try to make that decision. Which one are you going to do in that ball screen situation? And that's the problem that he poses.
So it was Jonathan Stark finishing with 29 points in the game. That is his second highest scoring game of the year. The other was the 36-point game earlier this season against the Red Hawks, and then it was a career high for Ja Morant. I think at some point during the course of his career he's going to have more than 23 points in a game, but so far his career game and 9 rebounds. A freshman point guard that goes in there and grabs 9 rebounds. Now, I don't know, Cameron Payne is a better shooter than Ja Morant, but Morant does a lot of things that Payne used to do. It looks like Murray State has found another real deal point guard.
Yeah, we won't get into this till after the season is over with, but I think the OVC, the coaches, the media, the people that vote on Freshman of the Year, they're going to have a very difficult task because I think you just saw the 2 best freshmen come through in this league here when you have Taylor over at Austin Peay and Morant at Murray State, and I think both of those guys warrant being Freshman of the Year, and you can sit here and argue for either one, and neither one of us be wrong because I think both of those guys provide so much. It's the scoring that both of them possess, but obviously you have with Morant what he does on the offensive end because of his assists, and you're talking about a guard that rebounds so well. And then with Taylor, the fact that he scores, but the way he rebounds the basketball too. So to me, that's going to be a very difficult task. I thought last year it was really clear-cut with Denzel. But I think this year it's going to be really tough to figure out which one of those guys are going to end up being Freshman of the Year in the OVC.
So to wrap up the Murray State game, what is interesting, and I don't know if you can put your finger on it. Maybe you can put your finger on it. You have been such an effective three-point shooting team this season. But in the second half of these last 2 games, it's 1 for 9 from 3 against Murray State in the second half. It's 1 for 8 against Austin Peay. Those numbers just seem like they just pop out of nowhere because we're not used to seeing those numbers.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what we're talking about, the desperation mode. I think what happens is guys start trying to search for their offense instead of letting the offense come to them. And when you start searching for that offense, that's when I think you start taking bad shots. So I think if you talk about what happens in that second half, I think our guys are in desperation mode and they're taking contested threes or rush threes and threes that are not in the flow, in the rhythm of our offense. So I think we've got to eliminate that part of it. Now, obviously, teams do a good job scouting, making halftime adjustments and things like that. But I think it's more of what we're doing as opposed to what the other team is doing.
Hey, I wanted to ask your philosophy about offensive rebounding and getting back on defense, because I know you're very cognizant of trying to stop the other team's, transition defense. What's your thought process on how many guys that you would like to send to the offensive glass to have a legitimate shot at getting a rebound, and what is your philosophy on how many guys you send back? Do you need more than 2 guys to drop back? What's the Rick Ray philosophy, and does it depend on the opponent?
Well, I think it depends on your personnel more so than anything, and then looking at it analytically. And so I've always been a guy that sent 3 guys to the glass in the previous. And so what we'd have is we have 2 guys get back, and we could send 3 to the glass. And so we had Antonius Cleveland. Antonius Cleveland obviously is a big-time athlete, and you look at his length and him playing that so-called 3 spot, he's always more athletic and longer than everybody else. So what we did was we started to break down the analytics because we were getting beat in transition defense. And to me, that's the worst thing that can happen. I think if you can keep people in the half court, you're so much better defensively. I think if you look at college basketball, NBA basketball, if you can make people guard score in the half court rather than in the full court, you're so much better defensively.
Gotcha.
But so what we looked at was Antonius Cleveland, we broke it down. He was getting 1.6 offensive rebounds per game, okay? And on that 1.6 offensive rebounds per game, we scored like 0.87, which is not very good. So that boiled down to, is this worth sending Antonius Cleveland to the offensive glass for 1 point a game? And so, but in transition defense, we were giving up some things because now it was a breakdown, and all of a sudden they got numbers. And so to me, it's, Virginia always sends 3 guys back. I mean, you're not scoring on Virginia in transition defense.
Well, it's hard to score on Virginia at any point, right?
But you're never getting anything in transition. And they send 3 back. So I went and I had discussions with Tony Bennett. We talked about some of his philosophy, and that's when we looked at the analytics of it. And to me, it just doesn't make sense if you break it down why you would possibly give up points in transition in lieu of like maybe 1 point a game that you're going to get on the offensive end by sending another guy to the glass.
The numbers say it does not warrant it.
Yeah, but it always depends. So you would think, hey, you got to send Antonius Cleveland to the offensive glass. He's too athletic. He's too long. And so that's what you think. And you sit there and look at it, but you always got to look at the analytics of it. And once you looked at the analytics of it, it became a no-brainer.
All right.
We need to send three back.
It's unfair to compare Ladarius Brewer to Antonius Cleveland, but I think just looking physically at them, you see a lot of similarities, athleticism, length, the whole thing. Their games are different. What are your thoughts? I mean, is Brewer a guy you want going back? Is Brewer a guy you want going to the offensive glass?
Well, it's the same thing, but you look at, to me, they're 2 different styles of play. Antonius Cleveland was a guy who was around the rim and in the paint so much more than Ladarius Brewer. Ladarius Brewer, shoots threes. And so a lot of times he's at the 3-point line or spotted up at the 3-point line. So, I mean, it makes sense for him to get back. But Antonius Cleveland, you made more of a case that was a guy that was on the rim. You might want to send him there because he's already there.
Right.
But Ladarius Brewer possesses some of the same athletic traits that Antonius Cleveland has, but it's come to show that, offensive rebound-wise, it's not fair to say, is he a good offensive rebounder? Because we don't know that because we send him back.
One thing I've noticed about Ladarius Brewer is he's starting to become a little more confident in his ability to get to the rim. And the thing that I find intriguing is I would like to know over the last 6 or 7 games what his finish rate is at the rim. It seems like every time he goes to the rim, he finishes. I'm struggling to think of a ball that he didn't finish on or at least get fouled and go to the free throw line. He has a knack. Do you agree with that?
I can tell you exactly what it is, and it's something that we had a discussion with him about privately, and we said it in front of the whole team. Obviously, I'm a numbers guy. So in the past 3 games before before the Murray State game. In his past 3 games, he was 3 of 18 from the three-point line, okay? So I think that was 17% that he was from the three-point line. But in his 2-point field goal attempts in that same 3-game period, he shot 79% from the field. And I was like, LA, I mean, I'm not a genius, but 17% as opposed to 79%, you need to get to the rim more and stop selling for three-pointers. Because, like, he was 1 of 7, 1 of 6, 1 of 6, I think, in the past 3 games. And then he was almost 80% from twos. And so that's something we encourage him. And that's why you got to go back and you got to look at the numbers and not just, you get that sense of it when you watch game and you watch film. But, like, hey, let's stat this out here so we can show him the dynamic difference. Like, hey, man, there's a 70% difference between what you're doing on threes and 2-pointers. I mean, like, let's get this thing going with some twos here.
It looks to me, I mean, I think in just watching the Murray State and Austin Peay game that he has been more cognizant about trying to take the ball into the paint.
Yeah, and to me, not only take the ball into the paint, but take the ball into the paint without messing around with the ball. I think sometimes guys think that they have to make all these moves. You got all these personal trainers and guys and things like that, and you go watch them, and they got these cones. They got 2 balls. They're going behind the back, between their legs 3 times and things like that. It's just not something that happens in basketball. And so with a guy that's as athletic and long as Ladarius Brewer, all he needs is like 4 moves. He needs to be able to shot fake and drive it either way, and he needs to be able to sweep and fake sweep either way. I mean, that's it. I said, you just need to get the ball and sweep and go by people because you're so athletic and so, like, quick. And so he's been doing that more, and now he's right at the rim. I mean, he's right at the rim, right at the 3-point line. So he needs to continue to do those things. Now, hey, we want him to continue to make threes, but they got to be open threes. And so I think that's the thing that he's really tried to change in his game. But, he's got to be coachable. He's a freshman, and so we need to coach him up, and he needs to believe in what we're trying to do in order not just to help him but also help the team.
Boy, and something else, not only can he get by guys, he can jump over guys, and then with his length, he's putting the ball by guys. I mean, he's just got a knack of whatever angle he needs to go in, and, I mean, he can find a way to get that shot off.
Yeah, you know what that's called, Eric? That's called being a talented basketball player.
He really is.
And he actually is that, and, his room for growth, his ceiling is so high. That if he buys into what we're trying to do and our offseason skill development, I mean, he can write his own ticket. And to me, you talk about the improvement that guys make in college basketball. This is tried and true. Guys improve more after their first season of playing college basketball into that second season. So that offseason is important. You look at the way that Jonathan Dalton improved, the way that Daniel Simmons has improved. It's all about, like, what they do in that offseason if they buy into it and if they do the things necessary. We always talk about Antonius Cleveland, the way he improved as a basketball player that first offseason that we had him after his junior season. He went from shooting 17% from the three-point line to 39% from the three-point line. Part of it was shot selection, but more of it was him going in and working on his individual game. So if these guys want to get better, they will get better because we'll give them the template. But we only got 2 hours a week that we can work with them in the offseason. So I always tell them, like, this is the template. You got to go out and put in the work.
How big is it now that you have sent a guy under your regime to the National Basketball Association, and so you can talk to a guy like Ladarius Brewer to say, hey, if you are a pro, they'll see you. The scouts will see you here at this university because we have a guy who is currently an NBA player.
Yeah, and it's something to me, I was brought up as an assistant coach. It's about skill player, about individual player development. So guys that I've coached back in the past that have played in the NBA, guys like David Moss at Indiana State, Jason Wells at Indiana State, Etwan Moore, who's now, with the New Orleans Pelicans, Robbie Hummel, guys like that, Carl Landry, all these guys that I've coached that had a chance to move on and play in the NBA, Trevor Booker, KJ McDaniels, we use that in our recruiting. But now to have somebody at this level, like Antonius Cleveland has moved on and had a chance to play in the NBA. I was actually talking to him the other day because he's still going through his rehab.
How's his foot?
He says it's really hard, because he wants to progress things, because he wants to get a chance to go out there and prove himself before the season is over with. So I told him you have to be careful because the worst thing that you can do is rush back.
Yeah.
And now you go out there and prove that you can't do it. That would be even worse than you. So you much rather have a guy questioning, figuring it out, whether than prove that point to him that you didn't, and it's only because you're not healthy, not because you're not good enough. But now Antonius Cleveland, he's been huge for our program. We talk about him. There's only a couple people, in the OVC that have moved on and are playing professional basketball from this past season. And obviously Antonius Cleveland is playing at the highest level.
We saw the just disturbing video of Isaiah Cannon. I'm sure you probably saw that, how he broke his leg. It looked like a Gordon Hayward situation. It was just kind of a gruesome thing, and we saw him obviously play for 4 seasons at Murray State. I think that was before you came into the league, but, just a tremendous player from Murray State. He's an NBA guy. Now you've got Jonathan Stark at Murray State. Is he a pro?
I believe so. It's got to be the right situation for him because I think he's more of a scoring guard than a so-called point guard. But I think that with the way the NBA is evolving in all college basketball, I don't know the so-called stereotypical, prototypical point guard, whether that's in, I think maybe Chris Paul is that way a little bit. But if you look at most of these point guards these days, they have to be able to score as well, too. So, I think he can find his way. He's undersized. And you go through that layup line. I think they have him listed at 6 foot. He's not 6 foot. He's maybe 5'10", maybe 5'11". So, whether he can defend guys at that level because of his height I think that's going to be the major key right there because he'll be able to do some things offensively. But now, like you're going up against a brute like a Russell Westbrook now, that's unfair because nobody seems to guard Russell Westbrook. But you guys got like James Harden playing the point who's 6'5" or 6'6". So to me, that's going to be the key right there, whether he'll be able to defend these taller physical point guards.
All right, so Austin Peay, a game where you're down by just 2 at halftime. You score 49 in the first half, 32 points in the second half. What did you see?
Well, to me, the disturbing thing is we shot 56% from the field in that game. And anybody that's had a chance to watch Austin Peay, they really get up and defend you. They make it very difficult for you to complete any passes. It's a physical brand of basketball. So it's usually that's their calling card is their defensive end. And so, what we do as a coach, I was telling my staff we were getting ready to run our regular offense. You can't because you can't complete any passes at the beginning of the possession. Now you can off a defensive rebound because they send so many people to the glass. Now you can get out and transition and score and transition against them. But if it's a set play, dead ball situation after made basket, you won't be able to complete a pass. So we did some things with early ball screens, high on the court. Jonathan Dalton, Daniel, Denzel did a great job of breaking the defense down, and then we were able to move the ball and pass the ball. But to me, when you're playing a team like Austin Peay with the way they deny and the way they pressure, you have to get the ball into the paint. There's only 2 ways to get into the paint. Pass the ball into the paint on the backdoor play, post feed, or drive the ball. And to me, I told our guys you have to have the courage in order to do those things because when a guy goes back door, he's not going to be wide open. You're going to have to make a precise pass, and do you have the courage to throw that pass? Same thing in the post feed, and then being able to drive the ball into the paint. You just got to be able to sweep and go by and get some physicality. So I thought our guys did a great job with that on the offensive end. We just didn't guard them. In the second half, the same thing. We came into that spurt where I think they might be went on a 16-2 run. And during the beginning of that run, we just started to go back into our old ways of like, hey, I'm going to try to figure out how to stop this run on the offensive end instead of stopping it on the defensive end.
It was almost hard to believe, I thought, at halftime. You shot 67%, hit 7 threes, and you did not have the lead at home at halftime.
Yeah, to me, like it's all about our offense. That's not the problem. The only problem we ever have on offense is us not sharing the ball at times. But, that's not our problem. Our problem is buying into things on the defensive end. And obviously, as a head coach, I've done a poor job of that. Now, I know we're young, we're inexperienced, but we've got to buy into that defensive end, and we haven't done that yet. And until we figure that part of it out, that defensive end is way more important than the offensive end. And here's the thing I tell our guys is that the things that they're doing right now, those are the easy things. It's hard to score. It's hard to make threes. It's hard to break your man down and make these plays that we're making on the offensive end, especially when you don't have any experience. So the things that we're not doing on the defensive end, those are the things that are supposed to be easy for you, because now all they take is like you being locked into the scouting report and effort. So to me, that's the thing that's disheartening with the team right now, is that some of the things that we're struggling with is just more about like buy-in, desire, doing the things that we ask them to do, because on the offensive end, that's what's supposed to be hard for you when you make that transition to Division I college basketball.
I think you could talk to some football coaches, the Ohio Valley Conference specifically. Any team, I believe, with 2 losses in conference play in football, something like 3 times in the last 50 years have they won the conference championship in the OVC. 2 losses, you're pretty much done, with a handful of exceptions over the last 50 years. So you get later in the season, you still have several games to play, but the players know we're not going to the playoffs. I mean, so you're playing out the string, and you hear coaches oftentimes talk about, we challenge them to play for pride, and you're playing for the university, and the things of that nature. For your team, knowing, boy, this APR thing, this having a kid declare for the NBA draft out of nowhere puts us below the APR. And so, what are the challenges for you to keep everybody kind of really still motivated? And let's face it, guys love to play basketball. There's already an intrinsic motivation there for them when they tee it up and when the popcorn's cooking.
Yeah, and to me, that's the most important thing. What you talked about is that intrinsic motivation, having self-motivation. But, we showed our guys things. It's this amazing social media clip that's going around with Will Smith, and it's talk about, fault and responsibility. And so he says what happens in our society is that we want to put fault with everybody instead of accepting responsibility of how we're going to fix it and what we're going to do. And so I talked to him about things. I said personally for me, it's not my fault, that a guy like Tony Anderson declared for the NBA draft. All right, even though we, talked to him about all the information, so it's not my fault, but it is my responsibility. So the things that we talk about as far as like what's going on, we have a tendency, especially, the younger generation, to like place fault and then not accept responsibility of how to fix it. We understand whose fault it is. It's easy to figure out whose fault it is. I mean, that's not the problem. And who to blame.
So we're human fault detectors.
Yes, but to me, it's like, okay, now what's the solution? How do we go about fixing it? How do we make sure that fault doesn't come to a point where it's hurting yourself or the team? And so, it's things that we talk to our team about. Is like, you can look at whose fault this is, that something is going wrong here, but are you willing to accept responsibility? Because that's the growing process. That's the healing process. That's when you become from being a guy who's pointing fingers to a guy that becomes a leader and rises above that. And I said, that's my responsibility, to make sure that I'm not sitting here saying, well, this guy didn't pass the ball, this guy didn't jump to the ball. I can see that. We all see that, but like, what are we going to do to fix that? That's my responsibility.
Yeah, my mom always told me when you're pointing a finger at somebody, you get 3 of them pointing right back at you, right?
Yeah, well, and here's the thing that, it always, when I tell you, working for Coach Waldman in Indiana State was the best experience for me. Now, it was hard. I mean, he is not for the faint of heart, and you got to have some thick skin even as an assistant coach. But, that's the one thing he says, like every time something, he said, I can see you over there, talking to a player. You got all 10 fingers and all 10 toes pointing at the person that was wrong, So, and it's hard. I mean, because some people use it as a defense mechanism. Sometimes you'll go over and talk to a young man after something happened. And the first thing, well, you don't even know what I was going to say, but you're already ready to, like, give me an excuse. So we just got to make sure that we understand that is a defense mechanism for most people. Most people are not going, that's my fault, I did this. And they usually are looking because they don't want that, especially publicly. Like you can talk to young men in your office or pull them to the side, and it's never a problem. But when you do it on Front Street in front of their teammates and things like that, they get embarrassed. And that's what they're trying to avoid. They don't want that public embarrassment of like, hey, you're calling me out in front of my teammates, or you're calling me out in the game. They can't handle that. They don't want that. And that's the difference between societies at this point in time.
Well, at times as a coach, you need to make them accountable in front of everybody, right? And then there are times where it can be very detrimental going forward in your relationship with a student athlete, right?
Yeah, and here's the thing I always tell them. I don't mind telling you things about what you need to do individually in private. No problem with that at all. But if I continue to do that and there's no change in you, then what's the point? So
right.
I'm
Exactly.
trying to help you, but you're not helping me. So if the end result is the fact that nothing is changing, and so like now, well, I don't like being called out in Front Street. I don't like being embarrassed in front. Well, it doesn't matter because like the end result is still the same. You're not doing what I asked you to do. So I might as well go ahead and get done with the private meetings and let everybody know that, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. And so now maybe, and my point is, maybe it's if your teammates know, they can help you, and now you can move forward.
All right, the Red Hawks are going to be playing Morehead State on Thursday. They will be traveling to UT Martin on Saturday. Now, this is an opportunity now. You've played Murray State and Austin Peay for a second time. You're getting ready to play Morehead State for a second time. You haven't even seen Martin yet, so it's just way odd the way that the schedule has been set up. How much different is it preparing for a team the second time we've already played them?
Oh, and here's the thing, you can't control the scheduling. But for us, Eric, this would be so much more beneficial to our team and behoove us if we were playing UT Martin first, regardless of whether we're playing at home or what have you, because now we've got this days of preparation for UT Martin. So UT Martin plays a matchup zone, and we haven't played them yet. So I would much rather have these days of preparation getting ready for UT Martin and flip it because we've already played Morehead State. So they're familiar. So like
Sure.
a day of prep for Morehead State would be so much more beneficial to our team than at this point in time. But now we're going to have just one day of prep for a team that we haven't played the whole season, but we got 2 or 3 days prep of Morehead who we've already played. So you just wish it was flipped around the other way.
It sounds like you need to construct a sternly worded email to the OVC of what's going on here.
Yeah. My wife would really, she says, like, she likes sending out those stern emails. I like to send it out stern, like face-to-face messages.
There it is. Morehead State, by the way, Morehead and Eastern Kentucky are the only 2 schools in the Eastern time zone in the Ohio Valley Conference. So that'll be a 6:30 Cape Girardeau tip-off on Thursday night for the Red Hawk men. We've got one final segment with Coach Rick Ray as the Red Hawks get ready to hit the road and head to Kentucky. We're at Wings, etc. Back to wrap it up with the coach after this on SEMO ESPN.
We love sports, so much that we packed our walls with tons of big flat screens tuned to the very best of sports programming. At Wings, etc., we love big, cooked to tender, crisp perfection.
Wings, etc. in Cape Girardeau. Final segment here with head coach Rick Ray as the Redhawks get set to head out on a 2-game road trip. They will be at Morehead State Thursday and then at UT Martin. That's only a 2-hour drive from Cape on Saturday. So I want to get a quick injury update, Coach. You really were excited, I know, about Dondre Duffus and an opportunity for you to have just a quality on-the-ball defender, a super athletic player that is almost impossible to keep out of the lane, just adding another dimension to you on both ends of the floor, offense and defense. He had to battle injury last year. Now he's battling blood clots. He's working for Sports Information during the games. You'd much rather have him in uniform. Do we have an update on Dondre?
Yeah, it's still the same. I mean, the pain and discomfort that he's dealing with, and it's a day-to-day thing. It changes for him all the time, so he's never been able to progress to anything on the court. So it's like he's feeling good, and then he'll get in the pool or he'll get on the bike, and then he's right back to where he is. So, I mean, it's something that we really can't put our finger on. Obviously, we don't question Dondre and his pain, but it's frustrating for him because I know he really wants to be on the court and helping his team. So right now what he's doing is, to me, I always want to do what's best for the student athlete. So, you know, he's got the internship hours that he needs to fulfill at this point in time, and part of that is with Philip Lady and in the marketing department. So, you know, instead of him being on the bench, you know, when he could be getting some internship hours to help him graduate, to me, like, we want to make sure we're doing, because, hey, it'd be great to have him on the bench, but I think more importantly, like, let's use this opportunity for him to grow off the court as well, too. So, you know, I don't know if he'll be back at all this season because of the injury. But hopefully.
And he's already used a red shirt, so this would be a lost season for him.
Yeah, and we hope to try to get him another medical red shirt. You know, the NCAA, what they always do is if you voluntarily red shirt and you have an injury situation and you're trying to get a 6th year, you never get it. So if you've transferred and lost a year, if you voluntarily red shirt, it wasn't a medical red shirt, you'll never get that season back. But if you have 2 medical situations, then oftentimes if you can document it, and obviously you have that the doctors behind it, then you can end up getting that 6 years. So that's something we're going to attempt to do.
It's rare, but it's not out of the it's not out of the realm.
Exactly. Like, so we'll do our due diligence with that and try to help him out.
All right, Isaiah Gable, talented 6'7" freshman. Fair to say he was really coming on, Coach. He was really starting to figure some things out, shooting the ball well for you. You had more confidence in increasing his time on the floor. He's seeing more minutes. Then all of a sudden he has a fracture in his foot. I noticed he was out of the walking boot. What's the update on Isaiah?
Yeah, he was finally able to get out of the walking boot, but now it's like the progression from that point forward. So he'll start doing some things that are non-impact. So being in the swimming pool, not jogging, but being on the bike, anything that doesn't put pressure or pounding on that foot there. So, you know, now he can start walking around instead of protecting that. It's going to be a long road for him, too, as far as, like, being able to come back. And, obviously, we want to be smart with him. But I totally agree with you that I thought he was somebody that would have been a major contributor for us at this point in time, especially with the way we've struggled rebounding the basketball, having another body in there at that 4 spot. He was really starting to shoot the basketball well and get ingrained in our offense. And just so I just hate it because I think this would have been a huge growth opportunity for him as a freshman. So, but he's still going to have a slow recovery, and I think it's going to be a long road back. So it could be that he ends up playing this season, but if you're sitting there with 2 games left and he's able to play, I don't know if that would risk him being injured, you know, for additionally in charge of that, unless the doctors and Miss Amanda told me there was no risk at all of him coming back and playing.
And the bad news for him is he's played too many games to get a medical red shirt at this point.
Yeah, correct. And that's the thing that's really unfortunate is that he bypassed that timeline a little bit as far as how many games he could play. So he could really benefit from a medical red shirt in this situation.
All right, it's going to be 6:30 Cape Girardeau time Thursday night. It will be at Ellis T. Johnson Arena, the home of the Morehead State Eagles in Morehead, Kentucky. Not the greatest sightseeing visit for the Redhawks, to say the least, on this particular trip. All right, Coach, we'll see you Thursday in Morehead, Kentucky. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much,
All
Eric.
right, that's Coach Rick Ray. That's going to do it. Redhawks Coaches Show will be right back here at the Cape location, Wings, etc., next Monday. Stay tuned, ESPN Radio coming up. So long, everybody, from Wings.
There's Southeast Missouri's ESPN Radio Sports.